What's going on, guys? Today we're gonna talk about Jason Kidd's 1995 Air Zoom Flight. All right, now the basketball. If you're a basketball fan and you grew up in the 90s, this is a shoe that you could definitely relate to. Like in today's sneaker climate, it seems as if every celebrity or professional athlete have their own sneaker shoe line with a major athletic company. But back in the early 90s, like the NBA had like some pretty marquee players. Like Michael Jordan was already dominating, but Jason Kidd had just come into the picture. So he was one of the first players to receive his own signature shoes from Nike. Like now you have like guys like Paul George, you have guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, and you have other guys that have their own signatures. But back in the early 90s, you kind of have to like you kind of had to be a great player or a player that was promising. And Jason Kidd coming into the league was just that. So the Zoom Flight 95 were a hit with basketball fans and sneakerheads alike. So for me, I grew up in like Togo, that's in West Africa, a French speaking country. And access to like sneakers like this was like restricted because there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was no social media outlets. So the only time that we had access to like these sneakers was through magazines, and that was just a monthly thing that you did. So it wasn't like you could just go anywhere and just get access and see the sneakers. But when we saw sneakers like this, we were drooling all over them, and we just were so ecstatic, but we could never get access to it. But like in Togo, we did have a second-hand market. So basically, you couldn't get the shoes brand new, but you could still get the shoes, but on a second-hand market, they were used and they were probably sent over from overseas from people that had used it and had no use for it anymore. So we actually, you know how people say somebody else's trash is somebody else's like treasure? This is the kind of idea behind it. So we actually went to those places to get those sneakers, and they were actually expensive because the currency exchange for us growing up in a third world country, it was expensive. So I didn't. My first pair of basketball sneakers that I coveted was the D Brown Reebok pumps, and I couldn't even buy the sneaker. So this is how bad it was back then. So coming here and seeing all the sneakers today is crazy how now kids just get whatever they want. I know I sound like an old dude and like cliche, but it is true. It's a reality. So basically, back to the story. Like Jason Kidd was the reigning Pac-10 player of the year when the Dallas Mavericks selected him with the second overall pick in the NBA draft in 1994. And that season, man, he was killing it. He averaged 11.7 points a game, 5.4 assists, and 7.7 rebounds per game as a rookie. But then he was unable to lead the Mavericks to the playoffs that season. And in that same season, he was voted NBA Rookie of the Year alongside Grant Hill. Now, I don't know if you know about Grant Hill, man. The dude was a beast coming out of Duke. Man, shooting guard, small forward with an ability to just push the pace. He could drive the basket. He could shoot it. He was just dominating, dunking on people. Coming to Detroit Pistons, man, he was a beast. But then ankle injuries kind of sidelined him a little bit. But man, Grant Hill coming out of Duke, you couldn't stop him. He had pretty much everybody on lock. He could just dominate any given time. So Jason Kidd was NBA Rookie of the Year alongside Grant Hill, and he appeared in his first All-Star game in San Antonio the following year. At that time, Nike already had like Michael Jordan as a top signee, but the brand was also recognizing Jason Kidd as another bright athlete who could be a sales catalyst for the business in terms of like basketball sneakers. Basically, they saw him and they go, hey, we need to get this guy on the payroll because we know he's going to be able to sell some sneakers. This rookie can ball, and Jason Kidd was that good. So one of the things that must remain in the back of our mind when we think about the 90s is that that was basketball golden age. I don't care what anybody says, and I know I'm being biased, but I grew up in that time. The Bulls were on top, and being able to put on a pair of signature sneaker was linked with being one with the athletes. At least in our heads, that's what we thought. So reselling wasn't the target, okay? So the backstory and the narrative behind the sneaker was important. And most of the players at the time came from like lowly circumstances. So it allowed most of the fans to identify with them. So that's mainly why basketball sneakers were like coveted, is because you could identify with a player because he grew up from humble circumstances and we had the same kind of upbringing, so it was easy to identify with the players. It's not like today where you have a lot of former NBA players sneakers, um, former NBA players and children playing basketball. So it wasn't like that in the 90s. You still had like the whole, hey, I came from humble beginnings and now I made it into the league. So you can identify with that kind of story. So, being that, Nike offered Jason Kidd the Zoom Flight 95 when he shared the Rookie of the Year honors with Grant Hill during the 1994-1995 season. And this was the first shoe to incorporate Nike's full-length Zoom Air cushioning system, which was like delivering basically outstanding comfort and responsiveness. It was a great sneaker. Now, given that Jason Kidd was a point guard, the shoe was largely designed for speed. So the carbon fiber synthetic materials were used in the uppers for lightness and durability, and the Zoom Air unit was just crazy comfortable. So it was one of the best cushioning systems that Nike ever came up with. So the shoe also had like massive pads on the sides to give it like stability and grip. Nike didn't trade like style for performance when it came to the shoe. The aesthetic like screams the 90s and all of the sentimental memories that come with the sneaker. So there are several colorways of the Zoom Flight 95 that were released over the past like 10 years. But there is nothing like the original colorway, which I'll show you in a minute. You can see the picture, and this is the picture of the shoe that dropped, the colorway that dropped in 1995. So because of the side bubbles that you see, the Zoom Flight 95 has like a lot of nicknames. Some people call it bug eyes and grasshoppers. But Nike also dropped like several other colorways, including some PEs. And there's one that came in like 2000, I think in the mid 2000. It was the red one, and it had like Jason Kidd number 5 on it. It came in a red and yellow colorway. So those were just some of the PE that came out. So the Zoom 95 actually was last seen in 2015, but for his 20th anniversary, it will return again in 2022. So I'm not sure what the date is going to be, but the shoe, Nike is trying to bring back like the original colorway. The brand has been talking about the edit to amplify, basically giving the people what they want. And the 90s are like now trending, so the brand is going back to dig into their archives and then get some of the sneakers that they know people are going to go crazy for. So the color palette is black, white, and metallic silver, and it has a black and nubuck upper and on its uppers, and it has a carbon fiber materials covering the panels and white zoom rings that go from the midsole to the side wall. Okay, so the design again is completed by Zoom Air cushioning, swoosh branding at the ankle and the toe, and a traditional lace-up clasp. So that's basically what you're gonna get. So the shoe is coming out. We will find out when. But in the meantime, if you want to grab it now, I'll have a link for you in the description. Again, thanks for watching. This is Ty from Asa Kicks, and stay tuned for more stuff.